Yo guys, what's up? This is a video where I'm going to be talking about the top 5 moments in my mind where a player showed creative prowess at using a new strategy or displaying something new and very refreshing in Warcraft 3 and in the tournament history of the meta of Warcraft 3 in the last 20 years. Now, what is creativity? Originally, I was going to do a video on what creativity is, but I'm not sure I'm really qualified to exactly explain the definition of creativity. I thought a lot about it, but I did come up with this. Coming up just with something new is novelty, but coming up with something new and useful to fulfill a purpose, that's real creativity, especially if that creation is successfully repeatable. So for these moments, I looked at times where a player would devise a new strategy or a new playstyle that would inspire many players afterwards, and it would reshape the way that the game was seen by players and viewers and fans around the world. Anyone can come up with something new, but it doesn't mean it's good. You could be creative by thinking, what if I just go mass acolytes? And I only make acolytes. And then I build 5 necropolis in the middle of the map. It's very novel. But I'm not sure you would really call it creative because it's just not very good, is it? It's not going to win you any games. So somehow real creativity in Warcraft 3 and in games is when you can find that special little something that reshapes how you and others may see the game. And you manage to apply it successfully in a competitive level against players which are your peers, your competitive equals. While it's historically always been hard to know whether a strategy is truly creditable to the person that first made it famous on the big stage, I would argue that just having the good idea isn't good enough. For creativity to be proven and truly shine, it has to be executed at that level. That does mean that sometimes some of these ideas may have been someone else's, but the person that showed it on the big stage will end up taking all the credit. And I'm sure that's probably true for many of the inventions in the past as well that have been credited to another person, but then there's footnotes in our history that says, hey, actually it wasn't, this person that invented relativity, it was that guy. I've made a top 5 list of paradigm shifting ideas where creatively new strategies redefined Warcraft 3 and how people view the game henceforth. The first one is going to be Zacard's D&D if not urgent. Do not disturb if not urgent. Let's go a little bit back in time. Back in 2004, I and my teammates from Four Kings, we went to South Korea and we lived in Incheon, which is a city next to Seoul, for 3 months. We were there to compete in 3 televised leagues, and it was, for most of us, not for me, it was my second, for most of us, it was our first time in South Korea. So we're there in South Korea, we're there to compete in TV leagues, and Zacard came over to our internet cafe. He is a Korean orc player. And he set up a practice session for myself and Moon. I was one of the most famous Western players. Moon was one of the most famous and accomplished South Korean players. And Moon trashed me 7-0. Zacard would then go on to sit at my PC and play against Moon, and he would win 3 or 4 out of the 7 games. This left a big impression on me, but an even bigger impression when 2 weeks later we left South Korea. Everyone flew to San Francisco to the World Cyber Games 2004, where, as luck would have it, I would end up facing short round a Chinese-American player in the semifinals, and I would end up winning and going to the finals. And I avoided meeting either Zacard or Moon in the semis as they faced each other. Zacard would end up winning 2-1 against Moon in those semifinals in a series that left a lasting impression on me and many others. The way that Zacard handled Moon was incredible. Back then, Night Elf players would often go for a Tavern Hero or 2 Tavern Heroes to create a lot of temporary summons, usually a Beastmaster and a Firelord, or the Firelord into the Beastmaster. Sometimes it was a Demon Hunter and a Beastmaster, but overall it was a lot of heroes that offered a lot of momentum with their summons early on. Then they would make an army, what we used to call it Army of BS, Huntresses, Archers, Talons and Dryads. Just this mixture of tier 2 army that was pretty high on the DPS, exacerbated its damage with the Fairy Fire upgrade, and the Dryads would offer lockdown, some slow, some abolish, some dispel, a bit of extra damage as well. And then with all the summons, there were too many things to dispel. Back then, Orc would play Farseer and Tauren Chieftain with Grunts and Shamans, and Zacard played along those lines as well. So his unit choice wasn't creative. But what was very creative and what netted him the win was as follows. Moon would attack during a somewhat standard attack timing. He would attack Zacard's base, and he would show up with this massive army, and that's when you town portal. Someone says knock knock, you say who's there. The orc will town portal, and he will probably lose. Elf, and especially Moon, was so powerful against Orc. Elf was winning more games against Orc than Orc was winning against Night Elf. Someone attacks your base and threatens your only base, your only economy, you have to go and defend. But Zacard said, what if I just don't? What if I just don't? And he just stayed on the map. So Moon starts attacking his barracks. He starts attacking his altar. And Zacard is like, only disturb me if it's urgent. This doesn't look urgent to me. So the barracks was dying and the altar was dying, and then Moon starts to chip away on some burrows and he's killing the shop. Maybe some peons are dying, right? And Zacard is like, I don't see how this is a problem. So what is he actually doing? He keeps making units and rallies them to the back of his own base, trying not to have them die. He kept creeping fast with his Farseer TC, his grunts and shamans. He would take a camp, that's when he gets attacked, he finishes it, then moves to the next. And if he was feeling really cheeky, he would go to a third creep camp. Those creep camps gave him bonus gold, they gave him bonus experience points, which gave him bonus hero levels, which gave him bonus skill points in powerful spells such as Shockwave and Chain Lightning. Maybe he'll sell one or two of the items he finds, buys 1 or 2 heal scrolls, then he town portals. His base is in shambles, but he town portals in with unusually strong heroes because he had a revelation where he decided, if I delay my time to go back, I can get a little bit of extra power, and that's going to end up helping me. And it did. He ended up winning the series 2-1, and he would advance to the World Cyber Games 2004 finals in a shock upset over Moon, as most people picked Moon for the victory in that tournament. Very, very cool. The second most creative moment from the memory of competitive history in Warcraft 3 would be the creation of the dreaded Mass Druid of the Talons strategy. You see, this all started with a Chinese player called MagicYang. MagicYang was a Chinese Night Elf player that developed a new strategy of Mass Druids of the Talon somewhere in early 2005. He would end up using that strategy against several Orcish opponents in a tournament in the Far East, somewhere in China. And I thought, maybe it's a meme strategy, I don't know why they're losing to it. Later that year, in 2005, the same orc player, Zacard, Huang Taimin, real name. I can say Huang Taimin because we're tight like that. I can use his real name. You can know him as Zacard. Anyway, he came from South Korea and he went to Germany to compete in the ESL Pro Series, aka EPS. And the EPS had a first place prize of something like $9,000. And, you know, South Korean gamers in RTS are renowned and feared by RTS players around the world. There's a lot of respect for South Korean gamers in Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2, and especially in StarCraft 1. So I maybe expected he would do quite well in the EPS. He ended up having some troubles to adjust, and he would not actually end up taking top billing, but Zacard was a legendary player that a lot of people looked at. He had invented the Mass Wyvern strategy against Night Elf and against Human. He was very good against Human in particular, often winning against any non-Korean Human players, and all Korean Human players as well. But the story, that what it's about here is he brought tidings from the East. All right. So I ended up meeting him at one of the German tournaments that I went to, and he came to me and he said, Grubby, there's a new strategy in China and in South Korea, and it is so impossible to beat. It's a Night Elf strategy. After I'm here in Germany, I'm going to fly back to Korea, and I need your help. We need to do some brainstorming, you know, from orc to orc, man to man. And he explained what it was, and he said they go Mass Druids of the Talon, and they go this hero and this hero and this hero, right? And it is, and I heard about it. I was like, Mass Talons? How is that supposed to work? I said, just go Demolishers. They have unarmored. Just make Demolishers and blow them up, right? And he's like, no, it doesn't work because XYZ and summons and this and that. I'm like, okay, Mass Raiders then. Obviously, you can just do Mass Raiders. He's like, yeah, but the Cyclone and then they go the Keeper and the Entangle. And I'm like, I feel like he's so unconfident about the build that he has already defeated himself. So at this point, it's a mindset issue. I've already come up with a bunch of things, a bunch of strategies that will defeat this mass Talon domination strategy, but he's just not able to hear it. And so I was like, just do this, just do that. He didn't believe in any of it. He said he already tried it, etc., and so on. And so I thought, I don't know, his mindset seems to be not so great. You know, in World Cyber Games 2004, which I ended up winning, I won against Short Round in the semifinals. Back then, it was still Druid, Huntress, Archer, Talon. And so after I somewhat didn't believe that it's really a problematic strategy, that year in 2005, a couple of months later after my conversation with Zacard, about 3-4 months later, I lost the Short Round in World Cyber Games 2005 in the semifinals again, 1-2 against Mass Druids of the Talon. So, and everything I just tried to do wasn't good enough, which is pretty frustrating, but it's not like I could have seen it coming or anything like that. So anyways, that strategy would end up dominating the meta for the next 10 years. It was the #1 strategy for the next 10 years. So apparently when Zacard said it's pretty good, he wasn't wrong. So I'm telling you here the history of the strat. MagicYang came up with it. And as everybody knows, the ancient meta lore of Warcraft 3, Spirit Moon is the one that perfected it. And it's his iteration that has endured the next 17 years and is still being played today sometimes on maps where it's suitable. Demon first, Beastmaster second, Tinker third. The Tinker third was not part of the original strategy. I think when I saw MagicYang doing it, it was like with Keeper of the Grove or anything like that. That was #2. Let's move on to the third top creative moment. Originally, China was a sleeping dragon when it came to both StarCraft 1 and Warcraft 3. It's not that China in general wasn't interested. They love strategy, tactical games like StarCraft and Warcraft 3 there. But because of the, let's say, the wealth revolution in China was happening shortly after that and wasn't happening as fast, it was more uncommon to have personal computers at home. The segregation of the internet management style in China has meant that it has sometimes been harder. It has been harder for Chinese people to connect with Western games, as I'm sure you probably are familiar with. And so for the first year or two, maybe 3 years even, China was not a big player in Warcraft 3, at least insofar as the Western audience and players were aware of. But somewhere late 2004, early 2005, a new player had burst onto the scene. His name? Sky, Li Xiaofeng. And Sky revolutionized the way that human was seen forevermore after in multiple ways. There's actually too many ways to mention, but I'm going to highlight 2 strategies that Sky invented and how he showed the potential for human in a way that hadn't really been seen a lot before. The first and most known one is the Sky Tower Rush. During a time of 2002 to 2004, human was generally seen as the macro race. Macro standing for macro management, which also stands for economic management and grand tapestry, big picture focused play, where you try to spread yourself across many different bases, get a lot of money, play some big game hunters style, and you pretty much try to ignore little inconveniences while beating the enemy with money. With the money bag over the head. Sky saw things very differently. He utilized a very aggressive human style where he would have a very minimalistic approach to creeping, starting with an Archmage, going for the smallest camp on the map without militia. Most people were militia creeping. He would save money on extra farms, extra peasants, extra footies. He would fast tech really quickly. 2 farms, Arcane Tower, or even 2 farms, a lumber mill, and a guard tower back then. Arcane Tower was a little undervalued back in that time. And he would fast tech. He would apply a lot of pressure. He never made a goal of getting Archmage level 3. Everybody else was hunting Archmage level 3 in order to get those juicy level 2 water elementals. He had a different view. He's a very talented and smart player and very hardworking. So he had done a lot of testing and he saw something that other people did not see. So he used level 1 Archmages to harass Orc players, to harass Night Elf players, instead of going for level 2 or 3 or 4. He used level 2 Archmage to harass early, without any intention to creep beyond that. And then, the moment he gets to tier 2, second hero from the tavern, against Night Elf it would be Naga Sea Witch, and against human it would be Beastmaster. immediately rush again with that hero as fast as possible, while double power building Arcane Sanctums back at home. Even before the first unit was out, he would call militia, pull them to the Orcish or the Night Elf base, and start putting down towers. The defender would try to take down the towers and be embroiled in an early defense, during which time Sky would have many summoned units like Quillbeast and Water Elementals. Those would be extra bonus units to bridge the gap for his casters to start arriving. The defender would then have a choice. Do I take down the Footies, the Archmage or Beast? Do I take down the Quillbeast or the Water Elementals, or the tower, the Scout Tower and the Arcane Tower that are building? While making a choice between all of those, new threats would start arriving, namely sorceresses and priests, and they would then slow the defender's units, who would then have trouble re-engaging and disengaging. Slowly the defenses would start getting worn down, and Sky would end up winning many of those games. Sky would end up defeating me in World Cyber Games 2006, maybe 2007 as well, if I remember correctly, with such strategies as the Sky Tower Rush. And he would end up using that for a long time to come. And everybody copied him. Everybody copied him. Archmage, Boostmaster, Tower Rush. And it was such a hard time to play against Human because of the way that he contributed to the thought school for Human. The second strategy he developed was Mounting first against Orc during a time where Farseer was the meta rather than Blade initially, but he endured with the strategy when Orcs started switching to Blade in order to try and deal with it. To escape with Windwalk from Stormbolt surrounds, he would go Mounting first, fast expand, and he would make a bunch of towers, you know, nothing unusual, 4 to 6 per base, straight to tier 3, Paladin second, and then Blacksmith, couple of armor upgrades for Griffins, and then Moss Griffins, and then try to rush and overwhelm. He was able to find a weakness in the timing for Orc's standard responses. The Stormbolt threatened people away from his expansion attempt so that the hero would be afraid. He would get that money advantage. He would then throw armies of Footies and mercenaries at the Orcish tier 2 counter expansion attempt, not even caring if he loses a hero, a TP, 2 mercs and 6 Footies, which seems incredibly inefficient. He'll kill almost nothing, but he'll cancel that base. And then, even though the Orc is getting high-level hero, high-level Farseer, high-level TC, or high-level Blades and Shadow, eventually 4 Griffins come out, 6. If you found a window, he would fly to your main base, kill your burrows, if they weren't upgraded to fortified. If that wasn't possible, he would save up a couple more, hit a 65 food timing attack. Orc will still be doing some kind of tier 3 tiny Great Hole expansion. They'll be getting their Bat Rider production ready, but there won't be enough because the armor upgrades prevented proper Bat Rider damage attribution to the Griffins. There was Holy Light, there was Devotion Aura, there was Protection Scroll. Altogether, it was an incredibly comprehensive strategy that ticked all the boxes. It was very well perfected the first time I saw it already, and it only kept getting better. And everybody ended up copying his build, so you know that it was better than whatever was being done before that. Very influential, fantastic player. He's still around doing events right now and doing streams and everything in China, even though we don't hear much about him here in the West. The fourth of the top 5 influential creative moments is actually, it's got something to do with me, but the real creative person is actually not me. In 2018, Blizzard started, for the first time in 8 or 9 years, they started looking at Warcraft 3 again and giving it some updates. Presumably because Reforged would later be announced in that year. But before Reforged was announced, anyone knew that it was going to happen, we already started having some patches. In one such patch, Headhunters were buffed. But not everyone, and in fact most people, did not see the potential for these buffed Headhunters. Just 6 years ago, very recently, they gained 100 bonus range, 25 bonus health, and they gained 0.2 per second bonus regeneration on the Troll regeneration upgrade. And I believe they also lost 10% extra damage during the Berserk mode, where they get the bonus attack speed. Altogether, these buffs made them from a unit that was barely useful into quite the staple unit, but most people didn't have the creativity and the insight to see it. Do you know who did have the insight to see it? One maths professor living in America that liked to watch my streams. He uses the Twitch name SaveOrcas. SaveOrcas was a longtime viewer of my stream, and he sometimes had ideas for me to play various different builds. The only problem is he doesn't play the game. Now, generally, I think you can imagine the quality of backseating that someone might be able to give to a 6 times world championship winner if you don't even play the game. Probably not going to be very good, right? Wrong. Although he doesn't play the game, he occasionally boots it up and tries build orders by himself against the AI without any of the benefit of trying out his ideas against his own peers or against high-level opponents. He used the power of extrapolation, most likely a beautiful mind, and he combined all of that with the looking at the data, looking how he thinks there might be weaknesses in other pros' builds, and he has been responsible for bringing that strategy, basically forcing it on me. Try this out. And I didn't believe in it, but I tried it, and I would end up playing the Headhunter build, and then I would have a show match against Happy, who for the last 6 years has been the best Warcraft 3 player in the world, undisputed. Again, best Warcraft 3 player in the world for the last 6 years, undisputed beyond any possible doubt. Happy is at the moment the GOAT of Warcraft 3, and I managed to almost beat Happy 3-1, in large part because of this build. And in that 4th game on Concealed Hill, our hearts collectively broke because I made a little mistake and I let this Death Knight get away because of a miss micro. It would have been 3-1, but he would end up reverse sweeping me with a 3-2 score. Nonetheless, that was an incredible series, and I was able to use such a good strategy because someone was so creative that they were able to innovate on the meta without the benefit of playing within that top meta. And I think that's an incredible moment that deserves to be mentioned. After I won those games against Happy, there was a buzz across the Warcraft scene where many Asian players reached out to me and they said, wow, that build is so good. And now everybody in the world started using it. And it is probably the most influential any of my builds have ever been. But it wasn't my build. Yeah, because I've performed well at the pro scene, but it was usually with whatever I felt like playing at the moment, not with like a really mathematically logical build. I played with feeling, but this was like pure data-driven logic and success. So yeah, I would say the 2 most influential builds that I've done is SaveOrcas' Headhunter build and my Mass Raider style from before. So maybe Mass Raider could have made the list, but I didn't include me in the list. But SaveOrcas was an amazing Ghost Rider. Yeah. For the 5th and final moment of memorable creativity, it's gotta be, in general, not just one strategy, but the entire tapestry of Happy's dominance. This Russian undead player it's difficult to overestimate Happy's influence on the meta and his contributions to the undead race. Back in 2007, 8, 9, Happy, who is 5 years younger than me, he was very young and he was very good, and he was the 2nd best European player after me, but he was very rigid. In a way, his principles still are rigid, like you know what you're gonna get with the guy, but his playstyle was so rigid. So oftentimes I would play against him and we'd be microing and everything, and I would feel like, oh my god, this guy's micro is so good. Let's try to pivot around direct combat. I'll do some raider shenanigans, some hit and run, and then he would have trouble adapting to it. And I saw the rigidity in his style, so I was often able to win from macro perspective. But after his brief stint in StarCraft 2, he played StarCraft 2 and made some prize money there as well in 2011, 2012, 2013, before he quit and went back to Warcraft 3, as eventually I did as well. But his stint in StarCraft 2, I think, really opened his mind to build order versatility and to adaptability. Because in StarCraft 2, you brutally get punished when you are predictable. Because the hard counters of countering someone's build are far more egregious than they are in Warcraft 3. In Warcraft 3, you kind of can be, you know, a strong service tennis player. Just a really strong service, you win many games with it. People know what you're gonna do, but you're gonna do it so well so you can still win. In StarCraft 2, that kind of thing gets punished. It's more rock, paper, scissors with the build orders sometimes. So he was forced to evolve, and I didn't think he had it in him, but he did. Coming back to Warcraft 3 from 2018 onwards, Happy probably innovated on the way that Undead is played on a really integral level more than 20 times. right? He's gone from ghouls to fiends and different builds, and he has sometimes added banshees to the build. He had the Pit Lord third build to break human expansions with Rain of Fire, which was the least popular skill on Pit Lord. It was generally all about Howl and Cleave when he gets picked. But he's like third hero Pit Lord, one base timing attack on the human towered up expansion, Frost Nova and Rain of Fire on the towers and the peasants. And that's how he was able to break through when usually there was just a little bit of pizzazz missing to be able to break through the human towers in such a brute force way. He is a 33-year-old player that has 350 APM or so on a bad day, and he still plays on his ancient 4x3 resolution. He's almost amassed $500,000 in prize money, sometimes off the back of $20 or $100 tournaments, absolutely just grinding it down. And he also won a $30,000 tournament a couple of years ago. What are some of the other techniques that he has added, ways that he has creatively added to the undead understanding of how to play the race? He coil spams aggressively on creeps in order to speed up and streamline his creeping route. When the old thought school was that coil should be preserved, mana should be preserved, or used only defensively to save ghouls and fiends. But he just starts a camp, boom, coil, another coil. Seems very inefficient, but he was able to shave off seconds, which, you know, if you've just watched the Olympics, you'll know shaving off seconds could be the difference between an Olympic world record or not. And it's the same in a Warcraft 3 match. He could arrive to the next camp earlier, he'll have more items, better levels. The only thing he's missing is less mana, which means he can't save units as much. So he compensated with his good micro to send units back when they're really, really low. Another one, he uses frequently, one of the few players in the world to use Backpack. He uses Backpack to send a second Rod of Necromancy to his Death Knight sometimes in some games, so he doesn't need to walk all the way back to get another one. And a Rod of Necromancy has, of course, always been a very valuable tool in the Book of Undead play, but he used Backpack in order to send it to him, so that streamlines his creep rat. Third, he has a kind of CCTV style scouting with his 6th Acolyte, which is a Scout Acolyte, and Rod of Necromancy Skeletons in order to always be aware of where the opponent is. You never feel as watched as when you play against Happy, where whatever next move you do, he's going to know where you are. So you better make sure it's a good move and doesn't have vulnerabilities, or you're going to get caught with your pants down. He is probably the biggest innovator of item stacking on Lich. Lich has a good attack speed, so really benefits from bonus attack damage, while Blade Masters and Demon Hunters often purchased a Circlet of Nobility to boost their power. Undeads and humans pretty much just didn't. And he just started buying Circlets on his Death Knight and then giving it to his Lich. It's a lot of money, and I thought Undead doesn't have money to spare for such things, but he proved otherwise. He would also aggressively steal Blade Master type items with his Death Knight in order to steal them from the Blade, as it is often a zero-sum game without a marketplace on the map, and he would then save them up on the Death Knight to give them to the Lich as a present of being finished training from the Altar of Darkness. Like, here's all the items I brought for you. So he starts right out of the gate with 4 damage items, which is pretty insane. As of recently, he innovated on the human versus undead matchup, going Lich first, which for the most part only usually American or Canadian players thought was a cool idea. Lich first against human, kind of a gimmicky cheese, but he showed it can be sustainably good and repeatable, and maybe in fact the optimal choice against human, and that's pretty much the meta now, Lich first. And it used to only be good in undead versus undead Lich first, because there's so many small units like ghouls and gargs, but I guess the same thing is true for footmen and peasants, many small units, and a great threat on the Archmage as well. Frost Nova him and you get a couple of auto attacks in, you trade well, and so on and so forth. It didn't used to be possible, probably because Undead Fast Expansion was worse back in 2010. But it had many buffs in 2018, so it was only a matter of time until someone would do it. But Happy was kind of discriminating against Fast Expansion against human. He didn't believe in it, but every other worse Undead, which is literally everyone else, they were expanding all the time, right? 120 from China, all the German and European Undeads, they were doing a lot of fast expanding. I do a lot of fast expanding when I'm undead, because I can't micro like happy with undead, so I need more money, right? So everyone was doing it except him. When he finally accepted and embraced expanding, he became the most dangerous weapon against human with his Lich Fast Expo. And as of recently against Orc, he's also come up with the 1-1 or even 2-2 upgraded ghouls. Upgrading armor or attack for ghouls in a one-on-one game against Orc was never really, I can't remember it at least, ever really a thing. But he made it a thing. So yeah, it's really cool to see like another new style there. He's done a lot for the undead race, which always makes you wonder how strong would undead have been and how much less would they have been nerfed if not for him. And so every player has made his mark. Every top player makes his mark on the meta. Everyone learns from each other. It is very fun to be a part of the scene, to see many of these developments over the last 22 years. I have a long memory of many great meta changes and contributed my own little part to it as well. I have a list of 5 players here that innovated onto the meta, but I couldn't possibly include all of the meta history, except if I make like a 6-hour video or something. But what are some of your favorite moments that you've seen of players innovating on the meta? Players that you remember from way back when, or even of recently? What are the coolest contributions that you've seen where someone creatively showed a new way to play? Let me know in the comments. I love to read them. As always, it's part of my enjoyment of making these videos to read those comments with your thoughts. So let me know. And if you enjoyed yourself, be sure to hit the video with a sub. Always helps a lot. I do appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks for watching and see you next time here on Grubby Talks.